And yet, here's the funny thing. This week, as I gave Steve my manuscript, on the top of it, right there, is a title. I actually titled it. Now, I didn't put the title in your little sheet if you are using that. I didn't put that in there because I didn't want to spoil the title, because I think it's that good. I think this is a good title. Now, I know I'm risking right now. I'm risking that you are going to like my title better than the message. I get that, but I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is it's not because of anything I'm going to say. It's because of what Jesus is going to say. All right, here's the title. I just couldn't refuse titling this one. Here's the title. Keep your clothes on. It's a good title. It's provocative. It's catchy. Now you're like, okay, Jeff, you better not disappoint. You're thinking, is Jeff going to actually crack open the book of the Song of Solomon with children present? Or is Jeff going to, is he going to talk about Bathsheba taking a bath? Or is he just trying to get the rating up? You know, he wants the PG rating, you know, because that gets more viewers. Actually, keep your clothes on has nothing to do with all of that. But here's the deal. In fact, let me just give you the bottom line. Did I just say bottom? With a title like that? Let me change it. Let me give you the bare essential. Let me try that again. What I'm trying to do is expose the truth of... All right, here it really is. If you will keep your clothes on, Jesus will go beyond any expectation you have of what you think Jesus might possibly do for you someday. He is going to blow your mind if you keep your clothes on. I promise you that. It's wild when you read the Bible and you try to understand what God is saying and you come to a passage like we're going to come to today and it's just like, what? Is that really in there? That is so wild. Well, this is what we're going to look at. Now, let me tell you the theme. The theme is the second coming of Christ. Keep your clothes on is about the second coming of Jesus. Now, you may be thinking, depending on your church background or how long you've been in church, or even if you've been in church a long time, you may be thinking, you know, I don't know very much about the second coming of Christ. Some of you might be thinking, and it's okay because it's all over the place. You might be thinking, I don't even know what the second coming of Christ is. What does that even mean? And the reason why we don't hear about it much is because obviously it hasn't happened yet. And we like to talk about things that have happened. We commemorate, we remember the things that have happened. The first coming of Christ we talk about all the time. Jesus came as a little baby. He grew up a sinless man. He went to the cross and died in our place. Rose again 3 days later, ascended to heaven, poured out his Spirit on the church. That's the first coming of Jesus. We talk about that all the time. In fact, we have holidays to remember it. We have Christmas that celebrates his birth. We have Easter that celebrates his death and resurrection. We have rituals given by Jesus to celebrate it. You identify, according to Romans 6, into Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection when you're baptized. You're buried with him and raised to new life. That is a glorious thing. You're playing out the drama. And every week, Eric just led us through it. We take communion together. We take communion because the church in Corinth took it every week, and the early church fathers said that the church took it every week, and so we just try to match that and don't judge others who don't take it every week, but we do so we can commemorate, so we can remember Jesus' death, burial, resurrection. So we have ritual and we have holidays, all about the first coming of Christ. But then you come to the second coming. It's like, well, we don't have a holiday and we don't have a ritual, but maybe we should. Maybe we should have both. I think every once in a while, and I know we have different communion speakers, and so here's one for you. Whoever's next up, you're like, okay, I'm going to do that one. I think every once in a while we should read what Paul said to the Corinthian church about communion. Because right at the end of what he said, well, let me just show you. He says, for whenever you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death. That's the first coming. Until he comes again, right? That's the second coming. So right there, Paul is saying, look, communion is not just about the past, remembering the past. Communion is about what's coming. Jesus is coming again. I think there's another way we could celebrate. So we could put this ritual in, right? Every once in a while we should talk about it when we do communion. This isn't just about the past. This is what we're doing until he returns. We won't have to take communion in heaven, right? Because we're going to be communing with him. And so, why don't we add a ritual as well? A Jewish ritual. There was actually a Jewish ritual that matches up pretty good with the second coming. I don't know if you're interested in Jewish history. I love Jewish history, and I love studying the Jewish feasts. Now, I'm going to share a little bit about the Jewish feast, and if you want to just tune out for a couple of minutes, I'll tell you when to jump back in, okay? So here's the feasts. They have all these major feasts that seem to, obviously they have fulfillment in the Jewish life. The feasts were for the Jewish people. But they also seem to be fulfilled in Christ. And it starts to make sense. Why in the world did God spend so much time on these feasts and the regulation for the feast? Oh, he's pointing towards Jesus. I'm going to run through them really quick. Again, this may not be your thing, but it is my thing, so I'm going to show you. So here we go. There's this feast called Tabernacles. That's a weird word, but the tabernacle was the tent where they met God. God's Shekinah glory rested upon the tabernacle of God. They had this tabernacle feast to remember that, to commemorate that. They did it by camping out in their backyard in tents. That's pretty cool. That's a good ritual. You realize that Jesus himself lived in heaven. He was the Prince of Heaven and the glory of heaven, and he came to earth and stayed with us a little while. Basically, he camped out with us. He set up a tent in this earthly body and then returned to heaven. In fact, the scholars call it Jesus tabernacled among us. The first feast seems to be pointing to Jesus tabernacling, which means that actually should be our Christmas celebration, which means we should do it around Thanksgiving time because that's when this feast is, which actually matches up with some other things in the Bible because we don't know when he was born. I like to think it's around Thanksgiving. Next feast is Passover, and you probably know that one because this was the one in which Jesus was crucified on. He's our Passover lamb, purposely crucified on Passover, which makes sense that Jesus probably was born on a feast like Tabernacles. People just weren't paying attention that it was during that week because it didn't happen in front of a lot of people. In fact, the people were too busy in the little town of Bethlehem to even care. So you got this Passover lamb. He purposely dies on Passover to be our Passover lamb. And a few days later, they celebrate this feast of first fruits. Well, what happened a few days later? He rose from the dead and became the first fruits of all those who would rise from the dead. That's you and me. And then 50 days after Passover is the Feast of Pentecost, and that's the date God purposely poured out his Spirit and the church was born. Then we come to a feast that has no fulfillment in the first coming, and that's the Feast of Trumpets. You look at that feast and you think, what in the world is the Feast of Trumpets all about? Well, because of our limited knowledge of what's to come, we don't think about the second coming because the other feasts, most of them anyway, are in the are in the first coming. I actually think the feast of Yom Kippur, I can't remember that feast. I think that also has to do with the second coming. But let's just stay on trumpets here. So you have this passage where Paul is talking to the Thessalonians, and he's sharing with them exactly what's going to happen when the second coming happens. He says, "For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God." There's going to be a trumpet that blasts, that announces the arrival of Christ, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and left will be caught up together with them in the clouds. That's pretty cool, to meet the Lord in the air. And so we will be with the Lord forever. Beautiful description from Paul of what's coming. It all begins with trumpets. So we could add the ritual of the Feast of Trumpets. We probably ought to add that after Easter sometime to stay in line. Christmas, then Easter, then Feast of Trumpets. It's going to be a big deal. We should celebrate it. We should make it a big deal, right? Jesus is coming again. That's exciting. That changes everything. That changes history. That changes time from being the time that we know to eternity. That changes everything that is wrong and broken to being fixed, and everything that is full of pain to be healed. From that which is dishonoring to honoring and glory forever, and it all goes to God, and we're with God, and it's just a beautiful thing. It changes everything. It doesn't get better than that, Jesus returning. And yet, I think it even gets better. I told you earlier, if you keep your clothes on, he'll blow you away in what he's going to do for you. How could it get better than this? The second coming includes something that is just hard to get our minds around, and yet when you think about it, you're just like, God is so cool. All right. What is this that Jesus is going to do that is going to go beyond, we're talking about generosity, go beyond generosity as far as we expect God to give? I mean, He's been so generous to us in giving His Spirit and giving us strength through life. He's been so generous to us by giving us the church and giving us fellowship. He's been so generous to us by giving the promises of heaven that He'll wipe away every tear, that it's coming. There's something more. What is that something more? From Jesus' own lips, here's what He tells us, going back to our Luke passage. Be dressed. There's where I got the title. Ready for serving. Oh, I see. So this has nothing to do with nakedness. This is being dressed ready for service. So you're putting on the butler's uniform, the maid's uniform, and you're staying ready for service. In fact, and keep your lamps burning means that you're not extinguishing them. You're not getting in your jammies and turning out the light. You're staying alert. You're staying alert, like men waiting for their master to return from a wedding banquet. And wedding banquets went late into the night, and we are definitely late into the night. Jesus has promised that He's returning over 2,000 years ago. We're definitely late in the night, so He says, be dressed, be ready for the return of your master. Jesus is speaking in third person. He does that often when He tells stories. He's the master who's going to return. We are the servants. We are to get busy. We are to be active. We aren't to get lazy. We aren't to... Now, it's okay to go on vacation. It's okay to have Sabbath rest. Those are important. But a lot of times what we do as Christians is we think, well, now that we are His children, we should have it easy. We should have it made. We should have the easy life. You know what? We're promised persecution. We're promised trials. We're promised that this life is not easy. Jesus does promise that His burden is momentary and light, but that's in the eyes of eternity. Once we're in eternity, we realize that. Right here and right now, woo, it's hard, right? This life isn't easy. And we can't get comfortable because there's hurt and dying people out there, and we need to fight for the cause of the weak. We need to take care of those in need. We need to feed the hungry, take care of the orphans, visit prisoners. We're supposed to be active, right? We're supposed to be dressed. We're supposed to be serving. That's what He's talking about. He says, so that when He comes, Jesus, and knocks on the door, they can immediately open the door for Him. He wants us to be found serving. He wants us to be found busy, not for busyness' sake. Man, we can get busy in so many things. He wants us to be actively involved in reaching the lost, in serving the poor, in helping those that are trapped in cycles of injustice or poverty. We're supposed to be there. We're supposed to be on mission. We're supposed to be actively involved in people's life, and He comes back like He said He would. It'll still surprise us when He does, and sky will split open, the trumpet will blare, and the dead in Christ will rise. We'll meet together with, and it's all glorious. But He expects to find us active when He comes. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them watching when He comes. Active, involved, serving. But why? What is this promise if we keep our clothes on, our serving clothes on? What is it that He is going to do if we do this? He tells us. I tell you the truth, that means listen up, pay attention, this is important. He, remember He's speaking in third person, Jesus, will dress Himself to serve. He's going to go into the butler room and He's going to put on the servant uniform. And we'll have them, that's you and me, recline at the table, this is in heaven, and we'll come and wait on them. What? Jesus is going to serve us? Are you kidding me? This is the promise. That if we will continue to serve and we will continue to strive and no, Jeff, that's got to be totally figurative. There's no way Jesus is going to, He's not going to give us hot biscuits and roasted lamb and napkin on the lap and refill our cups and no. Do you know when Jesus served His disciples, Peter was the first to say, no, you're not going to do that to me. And Jesus says, unless I do, You have no part in me. Oh, okay, well, serve me. Jesus wanted to serve his... In fact, remember, it was in the first coming, so we probably remember it. If we know anything about Jesus, we know about the first coming. Before he concluded it, before he went to the cross, died, rose again, and returned to heaven, he did something. And it kind of seems odd that he did it. In fact, it's kind of shocking. It shocked everyone around the table. Here's what happened. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God, so he knows who he is. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. He got dressed to serve his friends around the table. After that, he poured water into a basin. He began to wash his disciples' feet. Now, this is way before odor eaters, okay? So he's washing them, and there's corns, and there's toe jam, and he's all getting in there, getting the dirt off. He's serving them, and it seems like the most humbling position possible, and that's the way Jesus served them around that table. And of course, you could conclude, well, if he's going to serve his disciples like that, obviously they can trust him that he will go to the cross and die in their place. That could be the possible reason he does it, but I think there's a bigger reason. He tells us, I'm doing this and I want you to go serve like this. I want you to wash each other's feet. Now you can take that and literally go and wash each other's feet, and that would be an awesome thing to do, but sometimes washing each other's feet means touching people who are hard to love. Being present in someone's life that is just, you're uncomfortable because they're annoying, or they smell, or they're got bad hygiene, or bad manners, or bad language. We need to be people, Jesus says, that will bend down and serve others that are hard to serve and take care of their needs. But there's another fulfillment that's coming. Jesus in his first coming gets down on his knees and serves his disciples and blows them away in service with the intent of foreshadowing what he promises to do someday for us when he serves us. And it blows our mind when we think about it. Why would he do this? Why would he possibly want to do this? I think we have a very narrow view or focus or understanding of the love of God. He talks about it, how wide it is and how deep it is. And we sing that, deep and wide. But I don't know if we really get it. I don't know if we really understand it. God flat out loves us so much. Okay, here's how you could equate it. Okay, if you have children, Jim and Ann, if you have a grandbaby, a great-grandbaby, if you have grandchildren, great-grandbaby, whatever, you know what this is like. Because from the time they're born, there's things to clean up, there's spit up to clean up, there's diapers to change, but as they get older, it turns into, when they get sick, vomit to clean up, and kissing boo-boos, and blood, and Band-Aids, and all that. There's things that are just disgusting, wiping their noses. But you do it out of love, don't you? You serve them like crazy, even though you're the parent. You know, they come to you and their snot is just coming down and it's in their mouth, and you're just, and I don't have anything, and I'm going to have to use my hand. But you do it. Raise your hand if you've... No, don't raise your hand. Why? Because you love them. And God gives us children, grandchildren, great-grandbabies because he wants us to understand the kind of love he has for us, and he calls us children. He absolutely flat out loves us so much that what he wants to do is serve us. And Jesus served us with his life, and he's going to serve us around a table. And it's hard for us to get our mind around that. But we need to understand how much he loves you. Because what we will do oftentimes when we think about God is we'll feel guilty, we'll feel unworthy because of the things we've done and the mistakes we've made. And we won't accept this idea of grace. We might accept this idea of mercy. Because when we're talking about mercy, we're talking about being let off the hook in a sense, because God is not giving us what we deserve, and we deserve something really, really bad. So let's just say it. Let's not just hide it. Let's just say it. Not getting hell. We might be able to accept that, only we feel like, man, we're going to be singed, though, on the edges. We're going to be like escaping the fires of hell, but man, we're going to have some singe marks. We're going to smell in heaven a burnt flesh, which doesn't exactly make sense, but we're going to be it anyway, right? Wrong, because God offers something more. It's like the flip side of the coin of mercy. Mercy is an amazing, amazing concept, that God will actually take our place on the cross and die our death that we deserve. That's mercy of God. So we don't have to experience what he experienced on the cross, eternal hell. He gives it to us, freedom from that. He gives us escape from that, but he goes beyond that. He doesn't just give us mercy, he gives us grace. Grace is getting what you don't deserve. Or let's just say it this way, because this is what Jesus said in his story. Grace is getting served by God. Served on the cross. Served on the knee, at the feet, around the table. Jesus loves you that much. Please, 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 don't limit God to just being a merciful God. He is going to blow you away in his grace. If you keep your clothes on. It will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready. Even if he comes in the second or third watch of the night. And that's very, very late. That is, we're approaching morning here in the way they calculated watches of the night. We're 2,000 plus years. It's very, very late. I know we don't get to know the hour. We don't get to know the day. But Jesus did say you do get to know the season. Pay attention to the signs of the season, and you'll know that I'm about to return. So get dressed and get ready, because the signs of the season are all pointing to it's close now. Jesus is about to return. So how do we get dressed? How do we get ready? Jesus answers it. Serve. That's how you get ready. Serve. In what way? How could we be serving in such a way that he finds us ready? Here's the deal. We have been challenging each other for this year so far with 4 different challenges. We're about ready to go into the 5th challenge. 4 challenges up to this point. The last challenge, and this is all about generosity, the generosity of God, and learning to be generous like God is generous. He gives, so we give. He serves, so we serve. We just finished a challenge with pink cards, and it was amazing, these pink cards as I read them, because you went the second mile. That was the challenge. You went as a church the second mile, and each week as I would read them, I just there's more. I don't know if I had any duplicates. You could have for 3 weeks put in, and maybe you did, and I'm just, I'm not that smart, okay? I probably did read them oh, that's new. But you could have put in the same, I did this thing 5 months ago, but I'm going to write it again. I did this thing 5 months ago, but I'm going to write it again. I don't think so. I think you continually go the extra mile, and that is awesome, and that's what we're supposed to do. That's being found serving. As a church, we're supposed to be a light in this community. We're supposed to be a city on a hill, right? We're supposed to be serving. We're supposed to be making a difference. We sent some kids to Milwaukee to be missionaries there. And they did an amazing job, and there were so many cool pictures, and we were just celebrating. They had an amazing story when they came back. Our mission field, though, is not just in Milwaukee, and it's not in the other places that we serve long distance through giving. Our mission field is here, right around us. So here's what we're going to do. As we become, as we be the church, that's our next challenge. It starts today, but it really is for this month. We have an opportunity to be the church this month. We kind of loaded up the calendar with some pretty big events back to back. It was not entirely intentional, but since it happened, let's just run with it. This is Be the Church month, which means cancel all your vacations. No, don't do that. I got one coming up. I don't want to do that. We need to be here if we can at the end of the month and help out those who are leading these events. We have a food pantry that is going crazy right now, getting together this huge event they do every year called Community Days. It's the third Saturday in July, the 21st. You need to be over there if you can. And I know we got another event coming up also. Right after that, we start VBS, and people are going to be over here decorating for VBS, and that is awesome. That means every single person needs to be the church. That weekend and the following week, let's be here. And there's other stuff coming up. There's a serving day for youth coming up on the 30th. That's next Saturday. Be the church. This is Be the Church month. So just expect to get tired. God is going to be pleased with your exhaustion because you get tired anyway. You just get tired for the wrong reasons because of all the ball games you go to. And I do too, I get it. Let's be the church together and be a light, because there are families that need food, and so we're going to support this ministry, Caddis Community Days, so they can have food. And we're going to reach people. We're going to touch lives even if they're not the ones that need food. They're just going to see Jesus in us as we serve there.